My name's Ian Miell. I work as a partner at Container Solutions. I'll talk a little bit about how I got there. But today I want to talk about Conway's law, but going a little bit deeper and using that deeper lens to understand better how change does or does not happen within an organization. So a little bit about who I work for. Container Solutions is a company. We're an engineering-led company, but we also do strategy work with businesses that are looking to change the way they're working from a technology point of view. And over the years, we found that just doing engineering is not enough. So we've built up a set of patterns which were contained in a book we wrote for O'Reilly called Cloud Native Transformation. Okay. Oh, and there's a QR code for the link to the slides if you want them here, and they'll be on every page, so you can get them as we go. So, how I got here. I've spent 25 years in software after doing a history degree. So I did a history degree at university. Then I spent a couple of years working abroad and then realized my first love was computers. So I came back, did a master's in computer science, and then have worked in software. I worked in application development and then went into platform development. I was an engineer, moved into architecture, and now I'm a consultant. And I've worked with companies from 39 to 130,000. So as I've got this experience, I've seen some patterns showing up. And I like to think about, as I say, why things don't work. And that's one of my better received memes about patterns I've seen about people talking about doing agile and actually doing other things. Okay, so this talk today. By the way, I've been told not to walk this way because I'll be out the side of the camera, so it's not personal, guys. I've been told if I'm going to walk around, I've got to go this way. But I love you all equally. Conway's law. Why stop there? So I'm going to talk about Conway's law. I think everyone in the room probably knows what Conway's law is about. I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs, but I'm going to talk about why do we stop at the communication structures of an organization? Why don't we talk about how those communication structures are themselves determined? So I'm going to give a little bit of a thesis, an idea of my argument in a microcosm, and then I'm going to talk about patterns we've seen across different organizations that we've worked with or worked for over the last 25 years. And finally, once you've got that sort of thesis and those patterns in your mind, how do you apply that? A little bit about how you apply that to the businesses you work in or with, to give you a lens for understanding why change might be difficult or impossible within your organization. Okay, so the official definition of Conway's law, which is surprisingly difficult to pin down because there was never an official definition. But essentially, it's your software architecture, your system architecture will end up looking like essentially the structure of your organization. Technically, that talks about communication structures, but communication structures will pretty much mirror the structure of your organization. Or it's a useful shorthand for consultants like me to try and make themselves sound clever when talking about software architecture. So often we talk about Conway's law and the client will go, yeah, we know about that, don't we? And we sort of look at each other and wink and go, yeah, we're the cognoscenti here, aren't we? But it does get a bit tiring because it seems to come up in every sales conversation we have. So yes, it ends, Conway's law finishes at the communication structures. But what is it that creates those structures? And why do we care about going deeper? Well, we care because if we're trying to manage change then you need to think about organizations on a systems thinking level. And if you can understand why a system behaves in the way it does, then that can guide your actions. And if you don't have that understanding, you might just think it's a technology problem, or it's a culture problem, or it's this, that, and the other. But actually, oftentimes, it's either not a technical problem, technology problem, and it may not even be a culture problem, or to look at it another way, your culture may be determined by these causes that go deeper. Okay, so we're not satisfied with Conway's law, so let's apply the standard 5 whys approach. So why do organizations have their particular communication structures? Well, people often elide these two things, but essentially they have it because of their organization's structure. So that's one level down. Okay, so we get from system architecture caused by communication structure, caused by organization structure. Why do those organizations have those particular structure? And I think the most significant part is the financial structure. So does anyone work in a company where the business is divided into cost centers and profit centers? Okay. And how much of it's about 10 to 20% of the room? That will inform almost everything about your business. Because if you have the concept of a profit center and a cost center, certain meetings will include people from the profit centers, certain approaches will be funded, certain approaches won't be funded, depending on whether you're a profit or a loss center. Okay, so we've got system architecture, communication structure, organizational structure, financial structures. What determines an organization's financial structures? Well, many things cause that, but one significant thing is what we might call operational scar tissue. So I worked for a company that grew from 39 to 700, and as we grew, we had certain problems, and those problems would then be resolved by either setting up a new department or hiring more people, and then gradually those solidified into those events solidified into a financial structure which the business worked to. So, for example, very simple one: I'm the CEO of a one-person company, and I'm finding I'm spending a lot of my time on marketing, so I need to hire someone else to do that. And then you've got the germ of a very small marketing company, marketing department in your business, and that will grow and grow and grow, and eventually the marketing department will get funded, and so on. Or you're working in a business and you have a major security incident, and suddenly you realize, oh, actually, we need a security team for this, and we need to fund that, and we need to decide how that's going to work. So, all the way down now to organizational scar tissue. So you get this, someone posted this meme to me when I started writing about this. It is a moment of realization when you realize that your business is ultimately determined by your finance company, finance department, not, as you might think, your own individual contributions to the business. Okay, so again, in the end, if we go a level deeper than that, what determines an organization's operational scar tissue? What does an organization ultimately care about? And for the vast majority, not quite all, but the vast majority of organizations, it's where the money comes in, where the money goes out. So this is what I mean by money flows. And the way I look at this is that your organization will be honed by the sculptor of your patrons. I don't use the word customer because it's more complicated than that. The customer may not be directly related to what you're doing. And I'll talk more about that when I go through the specific examples. Okay, so ultimately your system architecture will be determined directly or indirectly by where the money goes in and out of your business. So, as a historian, I don't know how many people in here have studied history or related fields, but this has quite a precedent. So the guy on the right, anyone know who he is? Yes, it's Karl Marx. So I'm clearly in a room full of scientists because I think I just heard one or two Karl Marxes there. So Karl Marx, every historian now is follower of Karl Marx, effectively. That may be a surprise to a lot of people, but basically Karl Marx posited the idea that history is determined ultimately by material reality, by money. And that was a new idea when he came up with it. But now pretty much every historian will think that's the case. And I suppose because I'm a historian, that's why I was sort of naturally trying to understand why businesses I was working with were not working the way they wanted to. And I ended up with this sort of historical materialism idea. And if you think about discussions about culture, we often talk about culture being important for the change we want to make. And culture doesn't just happen. It's not just something that the people decide to do in a certain way. It's ultimately determined by the money in, money out thing. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's have a look at some real-world patterns, some real-world application of these ideas. So I spent 15 years working for a company that was a B2B business. We sold a back-end system, effectively, to businesses that needed it. And it was a monolithic solution, one big database, lots of applications running on top of that database. And we did project-based work around a product, which was actually multiple products with some common code base. This, I've found, is a very common theme. You have a product which is presented to the world as, this is the thing that we're going to sell you, and then customer buys it, and then it's like, oh, can we have this thing changed, tweaked for us? And you either say, oh, that's going to take 2 years to do properly, or we can just hack something and close the deal. What do? You hack something and close the deal. And essentially, over time, these kind of companies face a problem because they start with one customer, and that customer is really happy because they're getting all the attention and they're getting their changes quickly, and your staff are really knowledgeable about what we do and so on. Then over time, the thing builds and builds and builds, and then upgrades become expensive, and development takes too long, and it's just so slow. So here's a diagram of that sort of setup with some money flow ideas in it. So imagine you've got two customers. You built your first one. It's very simple. You've got one code base. You've got one set of funds coming in to finance and going straight to the customer team. Then you have two customers, and you say, oh, okay, well, we could just fork this off into sort of two code bases, or we can try and keep one code base and turn it into a proper product, or we'll just do a mixture of the two. We'll have, 1.5 database schemas. We'll have some common code that we'll share between us, but then we'll have essentially two different sets of code. And it kind of works. Then you get, here we got 4 So now you've got 4 customer teams, and we've got 4 ways money comes in, and then it always goes out to a customer team. And it's getting a bit more complicated here, but now you get, imagine you have 20 of those, and the company I worked for grew from 1 customer obviously to about 6 big ones and about 15 smaller ones. And I called that exactly the wrong number of customers to make a product, right? So management comes up with this great plan. We've got this fantastic plan. We're going to build products with features that customers want instead of doing these bespoke projects, which are so costly and wasteful. Our existing customers are going to love these products. They're going to buy them, and they're going to manage them. We're going to manage them as products. And then we will 10x our profit, and everything's going to be lovely. And this is how the world will look. We're going to have our 6 big customers. They're going to pay into finance. That's going to fund our product development team. They're going to work on the product. The customer's going to tell us what they want in the product. There'll be a product backlog, and everything will be wonderful. And it'll be hugely profitable, and we'll all be happy. Doesn't quite work like that. What happens is you get the product team down at the bottom there fighting with the customer team for resources. So they go to finance and say, we need 10 people for our product team, for our mega product, which is going to be sold, going to start making profit in 2 years' time. And finance say, well, hang on, customer wants to pay for this thing over here. Can you do it with 2 people instead of 10? So there's that fight. Then the customer team gets phoned up and says, can you do this thing for us in that product thing that you've just sold us? And the customer team says, yes, sir, absolutely. And then they go off to the product team and say, can you just make a change for us, just for us? No problem. And then change your schedule to do it. And the product team says no. And then they go off and argue with management. In the end, no one is happy. No one is happy. And this is a pattern we've seen over and over again. And once you start looking at where the money's coming in and out, then it all starts to make a lot more sense. Pattern 2, enterprise platform teams. So I worked for a bank, and I worked in their Kubernetes platform team. Well, technically the cloud transformation team, but mostly I worked on Kubernetes. And it's a very interesting question. Who is your customer in this world, or who is your patron, to use a broader term? Is it the end users, the people on the apps? Not really. You never talk to them. You don't really, frankly, really care what they're doing if you're running a platform, do you? Is it the government who gives you your banking license? Well, yes, indirectly, maybe it is. But if you're working on a platform team, that's not something you worry about too much directly. Is it your business units? Kinda, yeah. They are the customer. They're the people who want to use your platform, ideally want to use it. They're the ones who ask you for feature requests. They're the ones who demand a roadmap. Those are the kind of the customers that you're dealing with. But actually, in many cases, your patron is the central IT management. They will fund you. They might review that funding annually. They might not be judged by how many of the business units are using your platform. They might not care. And so you might get your platform team, and I have seen this pattern many times, they don't get funded because the people who are actually giving you the money don't care about the platform. It's a cost center. Can you just do it cheaper next year, please? You've built the thing. Why can't you just do it cheaper? And you say, well, the customers, applications are doubling every 3 months on our platform. And they kind of go, yeah, don't care. Not important. If that isn't resolved, then you'll find yourself swimming against the tide. And that's definitely a pattern I've seen. Another pattern we see, which is more observation than personal experience, is the mass market. So if you think about a Google, Apple, Facebook, Netflix, to a lesser extent Microsoft, they have so many customers. They don't care really what any individual customer thinks. So they really can operate as a product-based company. And you'll find that these companies are often terrible at support. So you go to a mid-sized business that does B2B, and they'll say, our customers love us because we do exactly what they want, and we do it as fast as we can, and we make lots of effort for them. Anyone tried raising a support ticket with Google? Doesn't generally go so well. If you think about Microsoft, they're often, if you're a huge bank or you're a big government organization, basically if you've got lots of money, Microsoft are often better at doing support because they understand that's where their money's coming from, so they'll give you a better level of service. So they're kind of in between. But it's no coincidence that Google invented SRE and Kubernetes. No coincidence at all, because they're such big organizations. Why would you have a DevOps team per product or whatever? We'll come back to that later. But viewed through this lens, it can make a lot more sense. Okay, there's pattern 4, which I called hyperagility, which no one uses that phrase. I think it's a great name for a consultancy. I Googled it and nothing really came up. But if you look at hyperagility organizations, I've never worked for SpaceX. I've never worked in a Formula One team. So this is kind of based on what I've heard and what I've inferred. But if you think about Formula One, how much would Red Bull pay to get 0.1 of a second faster per lap? They'd pay a lot. They wouldn't care about budgets to do that. They would just say, go do it next weekend. But there's a great talk by Joe Justice, who was the head of product ownership at SpaceX, and the link's at the bottom of this slide deck. And he makes the point that the only thing that matters to SpaceX is the pace of innovation, and that leads to all sorts of interesting consequences. So, and I don't know, I've never worked there, but he says SpaceX have no budget plans, no deadlines. Their KPI is the cost of shipping a kilogram into space. That's all they care about. You think about a Formula One team, the only thing that matters is how fast that car goes. And they have a daily budget cycle. So, yeah, if you think about how they make money, SpaceX makes money every time it gets a kilogram cheaper, they get 20 more customers. They make more and more money. Every time they can make a ship turn around faster, they make more money. So that's pattern 4. Okay, so with this lens, we can look at questions like, why did DevOps fade and SRE take over? Now, I don't know if everyone agrees with that statement, but I'm going to just take it as read. Well, DevOps arose when there was hypergrowth in IT, when there was companies like Facebook, Netflix, and so on were trying to push features out as fast as possible. And the users wanted those features quicker. They were going to switch to another platform if it had better features. It was a better product. So we were optimizing for growth. And in that context, having a team be responsible for everything in their microservice or whatever the organizational unit was made sense. As it got bigger, as these companies grew, as these features solidified, as interest rates went up, so there's another, this graph here is interest rates since 10 years ago. And, ignoring the COVID bit, you can see how it's steadily gone up. So cost sensitivity has gone up over the last 10 years. And in that context, centralizing ops makes a lot of sense. And as I say, it's no coincidence that SRE, Kubernetes came from Google, because they're a huge organization with millions of customers. Having lots of different teams basically doing the same thing would reduce their profit. So of course they want to centralize the platform on which everything runs. And that's true of a lot of companies. They've solidified, they're no longer optimizing for growth. Their patrons just want everything cheaper and more conveniently. Similarly, if you get the question, how do we go from project to product? Well, you have to sort of either create an artificial new patron or go find a customer and build the organization around that, that different kind of money flow. So that's a pattern we see and we advocate for many clients. Okay, so I'm running out of time. So in one slide, what's this all about? Well, if you embark on a transformation journey, if you're thinking about making a change in your business, think about the systematic flow of money, the flow of patronage in your organization. Think carefully about who your patrons are. It's a very lazy thing sometimes to think, oh, our patrons are our customers. It might be different. It might be different in your organization. It might even be more complicated than that, because your customers might actually not be a single thing, but multiple things. So you might have a customer who says they want X, but the people you're actually working with want Y. That's another thing to consider. And if you don't do this, you might find you're 2 years into a transformation project and you're not understanding why things aren't working, and you'll find yourself swimming against the tide. Okay, thank you very much.